Hello there. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, this is not the way it usually works because I'm on vacation and I'm about to hit up a beach. But look at me still making a video because that's how much I love Demon Slayer. So we're going to attempt to do this without cutting anything out. So this is podcast style. You're going to get all of me and that's that. In all seriousness, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, don't forget to like the video and also subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday, with Mondays being reserved for episode recaps of the newest Demon Slayer episode. Of course, I know it is currently Tuesday. This is not anything that's going to be normal. I am on vacation, although the season is almost over. So we'll see how that goes. And yeah, thanks for joining. And let's get into the review. I am going to try and split this up as per usual. We're going to do a quick review of the episode. We're going to compare the manga, and then I'm going to predict what I think is going to be the next episode. And we only have two more. There's also some big news with the last two episodes that I'm going to go over as well. So we're going to dive into it. I'm trying to not edit anything out. We're going to... Anyway, I'm going to start my review because this episode was freaking amazing. Now, I will say, a lot of times when I watch an episode for the first time, I tend to either like it more the first time, and then after I watch it like a second or third time and kind of sit on it, I'm like, okay, that's maybe like in the middle. That kind of happened with last week's episode. Or it'll be the opposite, where I'll watch it and then I'll be like, that was okay. And then the more I watch it, the more I sit with it. I'm like, oh, that was actually amazing. And that's how I felt about, I think it was episode 4 with Muichiro. This episode, I have gotten to watch it 3 times now, I think. And each time, I feel the same way about it. And that is that it is tied for first of the season. This was a really well done episode. I feel like, in regards to the manga and then the anime original content within the episode, I think that UFO Table is kind of back to a really good mix of the two, which I'll talk about in a moment. You know, we got episode 3 and 4, which was essentially entirely anime original content. And then it felt like whiplash when we got to episode 5 and we got like 0 anime original content, and it was like panel for panel manga content the entire time. So for this episode to have a pretty good 50-50 mix of it was really refreshing. Also, the music was spectacular in this episode, and the OST this entire season has been amazing, but this was the first episode where I was sitting there and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I I feel like I'm in a battle right now and we're pushing a rock. So that they did a really good job with that. And oh my gosh. See, this is what happens when I don't cut anything out, is you see every time that my brain completely shuts down while I'm recording one of these. So I hope you all enjoy this new format. Anyway, this is not staying like this. I'm going to go back to my normal format after I get home. I have to say one thing though. I talk about this pretty often on the channel, but my favorite voice actor, and probably the celebrity that I like keep up on the most, is Tanjiro's voice actor, Natsuki Hanai Natsuki-san. I've gotten to see him in person twice. I'm going to see him again in person in literally a few weeks when he comes to... I probably just made a lot of noise in that microphone, and I'm so sorry. He's coming to LA in a few weeks for Anime Expo. I will be there. I'm going to try and get front row for the panel. Anyway, he is one of the only celebrities that I like actually follow and keep up with their work. I've watched a lot of animes because he's in it. And so I'm like a fangirl, okay? I'll be honest. I'll be real. I'm a fangirl of this voice actor. Call it what it is. He did such a spectacular job this episode. I was sitting there and I was like, sir, this is a training arc. Like, I get that you're pushing a rock, but I felt like he was legitimately pushing a rock. Like, what was he doing in that... What was he doing in the studio? Did they like make him like push something? Was he lifting weights? Like, what is that? Anyway, very good job by him, I have to say. That was probably the highlight of the episode for me, was his voice acting when he was pushing that rock. And just in general, he's very silly at times. He did a really good job at the sentimental moments. We heard Kokoro Moyase, which I can't complain about. And he just did an overall spectacular job. I think that was the highlight of the episode for me. But overall, I gave this episode a 9.5 out of 10. I genuinely did not have any complaints about it. For the people who are saying they didn't like that Gyome wasn't in it that much, I'll just remind you all, he's going to be in the next episode. It's going to be actually highlighted for him. he is very clearly known to be not a good teacher. So the whole point of this part of the training was that they kind of had to figure it out on their own. Like, Gyome made the training and he was like, here are your stations, here's how you pass. But he's not good at teaching, and he's also probably trying to be pretty hands off, because if they've gotten this far in the training, that means that they've gotten through all the hard ones. Like, Tengen was hard. I wouldn't make it past Tengen. He was the easiest one. So I think he's trying to be hands off, and he's trying to be like, hey, you got to figure it out. You got to pay attention. And that's kind of how this episode worked. He wasn't really supposed to be that present yet, but he will be in the next episode. So do not worry if you were upset that he wasn't in it that much. He's going to get pretty much a whole episode next week. So you're going to love it. So 9.5 out of 10. Loved it. There's not much that could have been better. I just reserved 10 out of 10s for like the big episodes, like Swordsmith Village season finale, which, by the way, at the time of recording this, it's been exactly 1 year since that aired, and I'm suddenly having a midlife crisis because of that, because of how quickly this last year went by. Entertainment District episode 11, the second half of Mugen Train, all of these episodes, episode 19 of season 1, the episodes of Demon Slayer, those are the 10 out of 10s. This was an easy 9.59 out of 10. Really, really enjoyed it. But let's talk about manga comparison and how they did this, because I thought this was a little bit interesting. We really have gone back to being pretty strict to the manga with some added fluff, because the things that I noticed, we started at chapter 134, which is the very first chapter of volume 16. So this was literally the very beginning. And I'm going to try and do this one-handed. This is going to be an interesting this is going to be such an interesting video. If you make it through this whole thing, thank you. So we were pretty much word for word starting at chapter 134. We got through Gyome explaining the training. We got through Zenitsu passing out and Gyome saying throw him in the river, which is hilarious. There was a little bit of added content there when Tanjiro was like holding him in the river and actually looking very like concerned. This just went kind of straight to the comedy of it. We meet Murata. This is all word for word. We get to Tanjiro going into the river, seeing Inosuke doing it. And he's doing like the coming through. He stops saying it. Tanjiro notices that's probably a bad thing. He resuscitates him, which was one of my favorite moments of the episode. This was so funny. I'm like, I love how this episode that people can die in, when they almost died, they can make it comedic sometimes. That's so funny to me. And he tries to do the waterfall. He's talking to Murata on the stones. There's just like, this is all word for word. They just add a little bit of dialogue here and there to make it a little bit more fluffed up. All that fun stuff. We talk about Gyome. Side note, I'm 27. I'm the same age as Gyome, and these boys are literally calling him the rosary rattling old guy. Is this how 16-year-olds view us? Because, wow, that's great. That's great. I don't feel that old. He talks about him being the strongest. This is still like, we're really sticking to the manga here. The only difference, I think, is literally the translations, because the people who translate the manga are different than the ones who make the subtitles on Crunchyroll. So they're talking about him being the strongest. Zenitsu's like, oh, he can't even do that. And then he goes by behind them, pushing a bigger rock. Tanjiro's like, can I ever be that strong? Zenitsu says he can't, which is so funny because Tanjiro absolutely could be if he tried hard enough. Now, we added a little bit, because from here it goes pretty much straight to Tanjiro lifting the logs. It shows a very quick little picture of him and Zenitsu doing the waterfall. So that little moment where Zenitsu starts to fall and he's like floating down the river and Tanjiro is like screaming, trying to swim after him. That was anime original. That was a really silly moment. I'm glad they added it. The log training was just one little picture, so they added a little bit of like fluff to that, with Tanjiro's face being red, all that fun stuff. It literally just shows him lifting it, so there's a little bit of added original content there. And then here's what is interesting. So after it tells us that he passed the log training in the episode, it actually jumped ahead to Muzan and Nakime in the Infinity Castle, when that is the end of chapter 134. So this is the last 2 pages of chapter 134, and we skipped over a bunch of stuff. They just moved this part forward in the episode so that I think they just tried to go with a slightly different flow. This was also pretty extended. It's still kind of word for word. There was just like a little bit of added dialogue here and there. Nothing too crazy, just to kind of sit with us for a little while longer in this scene. I also love that they showed how she's kind of looking and using which eye because it shows which part of her hair turns pink, which I thought was really, really cool. That's something that you just don't get to see in the manga because it's black and white and there's no movement. So that was probably something that Ufotable just figured out on their own. Or, like I said, Gotoge is a part of it and is like, hey, make this hair like light up so it looks like she's using that specific one to look, which was pretty cool. And then we go back to a few pages into chapter 134. So that scene, like I said, was the end of 134. Now we're back at near the beginning of 134, and we're getting to Tanjiro starting the rock training. Now it shows him breaking his sandal, so this is all pretty normal. But one thing that they added, and this is where they start to really add a lot of anime original content, is it goes straight to the scene where those three slayers are leaving. Now, in the manga, it just says Himejima's training was harsh, but it wasn't forced on us. Anytime we wanted to quit, we could go back down the mountain. Now, for some reason, I always read this as these guys could just quit for the day and come back. No, I didn't realize that meant that they were quitting, and like that meant that they couldn't really fight in the front lines. But everything within this scene outside of that was added. So all of the dialogue with Tanjiro telling them, like, I still am counting on you because you're still needed. We need the support so we can only worry about the demon that we're fighting rather than any other demons coming. And they're just really honing in on that Tanjiro effect during this season to make it obvious that he's not just helping out like our main characters and the Hashira, but like literally every slayer that comes across Tanjiro is like changing because of him because he's just so kind and he's like showing them what they're worth. And I really liked that addition. Then we jumped into our scene where Tanjiro is cooking. And again, there's just like some little additional content here, like dialogue. They really honed in on the fact that Tanjiro is good at cooking, and I really liked that. But this is all pretty much the same. Tanjiro's like, was the son of a charcoal seller. And fun fact, that scene where he says, this kind of brings back memories and it fades to him doing this for his family, was anime original content. Ufotable, you are on my list. Because how did I go from belly laughing to holding back tears within 2 seconds? Because that's what happened. And the Kamado family is very personal to me. So that was anime original content. He's going back to Boulder training. It's all pretty much the same. He's contemplating when the demons are going to show up. Genya shows up. They talk a little bit. This is, again, all word for word. Very true to the manga. All of this conversation is very important to the story. So, of course, they're not going to really change a lot here. If anything, they're just going to add a little bit of dialogue to stretch it out like they are. But this is all like exactly the same. We see Guillaume watching them. And then right from the little shot of Gyomei watching saying Namu, this is when in the manga we finally get to Nakime and Muzan, so we already covered that. We're going to skip now to chapter 135. And this is where things get very anime original. So there is a little doodle right here. And this is a doodle that says, during Hashira training, Tanjiro was nicknamed Mom. But there's not really a mention of it ever in the manga. It's just like the little side note from Gotoge that they put on next to each chapter. Ufotable occasionally does animate this stuff, like Tanjiro braiding Nezuko's hair in the last season. This wasn't like necessarily animated. They just added the mention of all the Slayers calling him Mom throughout this episode, which was really cute. I loved it. I love that Tanjiro is canonically a good cook, and it makes sense because he just like understands heat and how all that works. Of course, he's a good cook. I bet he helped his mom cook a lot after his dad died with his family. Anyway, so that was a little bit. Ooh, my little thing moved that I have my phone on. That was a little added. Interestingly enough, from here on out, we get a lot more anime original content because we see Tanjiro cooking for them again. And there's like a whole training sequence here where Tanjiro's pushing on the rock after he talks to Genya. This was all anime original content, as well as the conversation inside the little house where Tanjiro was cooking again and Genya showed up. Now, some of what happened in that conversation was manga canon to this first page of chapter 135. However, when they did it in chapter 135 in the manga, it's more of a flashback to like essentially the conversation that we just watched, but we just didn't get it until now. In the anime, they moved that to a conversation inside the house to make it like in a different spot, but they still talk about the exact same things about how, it's interesting that Gyome can move it, but hasn't manifested a mark. Genya hasn't manifested a mark, even though he's moved it a tiny bit, although he has not moved it one cho yet. And then we get a little bit of extended dialogue with Tanjiro as he talks about what his repetitive action is. Again, this is pretty much panel for panel of the manga. He talks about it, and then it shows his family, and then it shows Rengoku, and he says Kokoro Moyase. He starts moving it. The mark kind of comes and goes, which is kind of hard to tell in the manga as well. I like how they animated this. And this is all word for word. He moves it. Zenitsu and Inosuke are watching, and that's it. So we end on page 4 of chapter 135. So we adapted 134 and about a quarter of 135. So that is what was adapted. They did a really good job. Like I said, they were mixing in a lot of anime original content within it, but the episode itself had a lot of good just story development with the manga, and they didn't add a ton. So that was the comparison of it. I hope you enjoyed learning about what was I've been talking so long, my brain did a really good job at not stopping there until just now. They did a really good job at adapting what was there. I think that all the dialogue that they added, while some of it was just like silly fluff, that's still good to see. It's fun to have the fluff, it's fun to have the silly moments, and some of it was just like changed around, just added a little bit so we could sit on the moment here and there. Also, one final note, that final sequence with Muzan where he talks about the where he just says like, "What do you look like, Ubiyashiki?" was anime original, just to build the hype, because I think the next 2 episodes are going to be insane. So before I talk about manga spoilers and predict what's going to happen in the next 2 episodes, we did get some news. Episode 7 is going to be extended to a 40-minute time slot in Japan, which granted that means there's going to be commercials. We'll get about 28 minutes, I think, instead of around the 23. So it's going to be a little bit extended, but not like super extended. And then the season finale is episode 8. It has now been confirmed by the official like UFO table and Demon Slayer Twitter accounts. And that one will have an hour slot, which means we'll have about 48 minutes of content for the final episode. So these last 2 episodes, I think, are going to be spectacular. I have a lot of excitement for these 2, especially the season finale. I genuinely think the season finale might go down in history as one of the best episodes of Demon Slayer, which is really great because I know a lot of people have been kind of bored by this season. I've been enjoying it. It hasn't had as much hype as like I love, but it's been just an enjoyable season so far. So really looking forward to these final 2 episodes. They're going to be crazy. So with that, I'm going to dip into some manga spoilers now. I'm going to talk about my predictions for the next episode and where I think it is going to end. So this is your chance to turn back now. If you don't want to know any manga spoilers for the future, then this is where you can stop the video. With that being said, we're going to talk really quick about it. And I believe that the next episode is going to end on a cliffhanger because the next chapter, chapter 135, is all Gyome's backstory. I think they're going to really extend that and take quite a lot of time on that. And then it ends with him telling Tanjiro that he's doing well and then he can move on to the next Hashira, which is Giyu. We're going to have Giyu again. And literally from here on out, they're going to be inseparable. And I'm so freaking excited. So chapter 135 ends on that. Chapter 136 is a bunch of just kind of fluff. We see Sanemi again. We see Giyu and Sanemi sparring, which I'm sure they're going to extend that to make it look real good. They talk a little bit about food. It's really, really cute, but a lot of fluff. And then it ends with Muzan showing up at Ubiyashiki's house. Now, I think they're giving this episode an extended time slot because I think we're going to cover till the end of 136. That is my best guess. That is my best prediction. I know I'm not the best at predicting. I haven't been doing super well. But if they end the episode on this, then I also know that my prediction on where the season is going to end is pretty spot on. If you want to know where I think it's going to end, I talked about it in the last episode. So that is where I think the episode is going to end, the end of 136. That means that the final episode of the season is probably going to cover a few chapters. I think it's going to end on 139. I think that's the best way to end it. I think that's going to keep people excited for the next season. And that is that. So that's my predictions. That's it for today's video. I know that was a lot. That was my brain is going crazy because I usually don't just talk and talk and talk. But that's it for today's video. I really loved this week's episode. I'm really, really looking forward to the final 2 episodes. I'm a little sad we only have 2 left, but I knew this was going to go by quick. So if you liked this video, like I said, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, click on the notifications bell so you get notified whenever I post a new video. You can also follow me on social media. I am at Looking Nerdy on Instagram, X, and TikTok. And with that, from the beach, I say, Johnny. Bye, everybody.